Good afternoon. So, full disclosure, this is the same day and I'm recording my second episode because it's on my mind and I would like to get a jump on these. So, um, what I'm thinking is since I got a really good record, I'm going to try and go through basically stair steps of how I got to where I'm at. And I talked about this being season 6, which is true. Okay. There's been 5 definitive seasons that I have documented. He's literally putting my life in the form of a hour drama. Okay. And I think that's just because I'm a writer and he gets it. I get it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Right. It would not surprise me at all if this thing that I post ends up being like you'll get to see what I mean. So I don't want to fudge it. I want people to, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can, because number one, I'm incapable of anything else. I don't have any interest in not being transparent or trying to have discretion or all of these code words that we have for caring about what other people think about what we're doing. I'm literally incapable of being this person. So I'm just going to try and be as tactful and forthcoming and diplomatic. And I'm going to use all these other words because, you know, at some point I'm going to overshare. It's just one of my things. I call it overshare for y'all's sake. Let's just say that. Because of the feedback I've gotten over my life, but I just call it sharing. You understand? So it's going to happen. Sorry in advance. You can leave me comments if you like. I may read them. I may not. I may respond. I may not. But yeah, this is what we're going to do. But, I'm going to do my best because we don't want anybody to be unnecessarily whatever. But just know that, I can only do so much because this is God we're talking about. And He is, if you could know how uninterested He is in, in the discretion that y'all are so interested in. So yeah, but hopefully through this narrative, this will ease you into what I'm trying to say, and it will help cushion whatever information I have to reveal in the future. Okay. So first thing, let me go back because I kind of like rewatched. I kind of sped through my previous episode, and I forgot to say like what his answer was about the books, which I'm sure you all are on the edge of your seats about. So when I asked him about should I keep my romance novels up or should I take them down or whatever, they were already down. Should I put them back up? And the reason why I always kind of go off topic when I think about this is because I'm just revisiting our relationship and how he's never not been honest with me. He's never not been forthcoming, but it's just like the way that he talks to us in the way that we need to hear it in the moment. Like a lot of people think that that's all that there is. It's like, no, that's the level that you're at. That's what he's going to talk to you at. Because as soon as this experience happened with us, it was like this other part of me, it's like my full self was integrated with him and there was no barrier at all. And I didn't know that there was, the whatever barrier that I thought existed was gone and it just continued to not exist the further we got. So, yeah, he told me, he said, he was like, listen, Actually, it was funny because I said, "Do you like? Should I take him down? Should I leave him up, or should I take him down?" He was like, He said, "We literally don't care." He's like, "We literally don't care," and it was kind of funny. Like it was, I'm able to let some funniness through because of our just the nature of how our relationship started, which I'll get into. But like, it was like he's like, "We really don't, literally don't care," and it was like this funny thing where it was like whoever was saying that, and then there was like cosigns in the back. They were like, "Yeah, we don't care. I don't care." It's like that. And it was like, he was like, "What type of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the type of person who uh, leaves that up and deals with the consequences of that being what is known about you, or are you the type of person who takes that down and then you say, 'This is what I was doing, but now I've taken it down'? Like, which person are you?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm the person that leaves the shit up and says, 'This is what I'm doing.'" And he was like, "Well, you should probably do that." So I posted him, I put him back up. But you hear how it's like there's this like diplomacy, wisdom. It's all of the hallmarks of God, even if you don't talk to him that casually or whatever. Very mature and just, fatherly, whatever, because that's what was coming through. But I think about this all the time, take it for granted, I guess. But like when I first really started having a relationship with him, as a teenager, when I decided I'm going to become a Christian for myself, I'm deciding to do this. Um, I was about 17 or 18 years old. And somewhere along those lines, because, whenever I told you that story of, 9/22/09, I was like 27. So I was only like, 7 or 8 years into it. At some point, I was like, I was hearing other people who were talking to God or hearing from God. Come on, you're in church, you grew up in church, you hear the prophet comes and says whatever. You have an idea of what you think God sounds like. They're all talking like the Bible, you know what I'm saying? So you're like, well, he must talk like the Bible, whatever, that's fine. But I would always be like, you know what, God, like, I just want to talk to you like how I talk to you, like how I would talk to anybody else. And more or less, he would be like, that's cool with me. That's fine with me. And then at some point, that got even pushed even further to where I said, and he's really pointing this out to me, is like, why certain things about me are different. Aside from certain moments that he hasn't talked to me yet. This won't be until later seasons, but one thing that if you're going to understand season 1, you got to know about me is that at some point I said, because I'm a writer, I have an imagination, I'm daydreaming all the time. Some might call it maladaptive. I don't think that's what it is. I think that people don't. There are people out there who don't understand what the point of the imagination is yet, or they don't know what God says it is, which he did actually tell me recently. But so yeah, that was my life already. So it was very easy for him to sort of integrate him into that in some way. I didn't know at first if it was something that was okay to do. I didn't see anybody else really doing that or saying that they were doing that. Not when I was, whatever age I was. Eventually, you start to hear people say, like, I picture a guy like this, or I do this, or whatever. But at the time, there wasn't that much of that. And so I said, like, a lot of people are really wrapped up in, like, is this really God? And how do I hear from God? And how do I know God is speaking to me? And I was like, you know what? I could probably forego, some people need like 90% certainty. You could really bring that down to, like, for me, you could bring that down to like 70 or 60% certainty if I can get the fluidity of feeling like we're having a relationship and I'm talking to you. And at some point, it had to have happened. I can't pinpoint it for you, but at some point I said that, and he was like, okay. And I was like, okay. He's like, cool. I'm like, cool. So when I did that, I did not realize that I was agreeing to sort of this permanent thing where I'm laughing and joking and laughing, and I'm still not sure. I'm not sure that it's him. Like, I'm really not sure that it's him. But it probably is him after a couple of years. It's like, it probably is him. And then you got a couple things that happen that are just funny that, like, how else could that have happened? Things that he would just say out of the blue that you're like, okay, well, I could never come up with that. Like, I don't know. There's things over the years that you remember that just stick out in your mind of him, like, saying a joke. I remember one time I was driving and I was like, look at this. It was like a sunset or something. And I was like, look at this beautiful sunset. And I was like, God, you just bathed this sunset and like, it wasn't even hard for you. You just, whatever. And he was like, why do people say that? I was like, what? And he was like, why do people say that it isn't hard for me? Just because I'm God? I was like, I guess. Like, little things like that. And those would be like these treasured moments that, of course, I told no one because no one freaking cared. So I remember one time I was watching I was on YouTube and I was watching like Whitney Houston clips. I wasn't even really addressing him, but I was like, man, we haven't seen like talent like this in such a long time. I was like, what happened that it just seemed like they sort of like stopped coming? Like, why isn't there, more Whitney Houstons? And he was like, maybe she got aborted. Sir, I was like dead on the floor. Like, I know I didn't say that to myself. You just dead, just maybe she got aborted. Bruh. I was like, okay. So because I made this pact, I got this sort of weirder iteration of God that I cherished. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was not hearing God in the same way. And like, when it came time to like write something down or to share, because we would, you go through things where you're giving prophetic words out to people and all of these phases that I went through, being, the churchgoer that I was. And, I was good with the pen, you know what I'm saying? I knew how to write something that sounded God-ish and biblical, you know what I'm saying? And it's not like I was making it up. It just, and I felt like I understood his voice a lot and could write something that could really be poignant for somebody. But it was very guarded. It was very, in the way that we all think that God talks. The way that we think it's safe to hear God talk. But even with that, I was already sort of playing with that in my private time with him. And by playing with that, I mean, there's like a certain permission that you give to him. It's not that it's like you try not to influence it, but at the same time, you're not letting him just come through any old way either. You have to, and if you go to church, they will sort of train you on how to hear God's voice. How do I hear God's voice? How do I hear God's voice? And, they tell you, okay, well, it's going to sound like the Bible in the sense of like, he's not going to contradict himself, all of these things, right? All of these whatevers. And even with that, a lot of people do not feel free to listen for God. They're probably not that interested in it because it is so like kind of like rigid and static. And I'm not here to just like poo-poo on people who, like, again, the Jesus Calling book. I mean, people swear up and down that that's freaking witchcraft and is new agey. And it's like, sorry to break it to you, but God tends to sound new agey sometimes. There's a reason why new agey is appealing, and it's not because there's no God in it at all. Do you know what I'm saying? So he can get new agey with it sometimes because he knows everything and he's not concerned with the same crap that we are. So yeah, there's certain things that are going to sort of overlap because any other movements rely on truth to grab you, which we say all the time. But then when it happens, we're like, what is that? So, anyway, the point is, my thing was always really a little bit weird. And I was drawn to sort of a casual, this sort of casual thing. And like, also being a romance writer, it's kind of like, it's kind of cringy almost to the degree. I feel like maybe this is something that's just female coded. This idea that you can sort of run into the CEO or the king or the head guy, main guy, whatever, and have a full blown conversation with him, and you don't know who he is, kind of thing. I don't think that's what I was aiming for, but that's what ended up freaking happening every single time. I mean, it's kind of unavoidable. And I think the reason why we're so drawn to this is the exact relationship that we're supposed to be having. I think that it's in the romance, like it's all about him, but we don't know that because we don't think it's possible. And I don't know if it's just me. I don't. It's just me. So I don't know. I know that if I've heard of other people having these types of that type of intimacy with God, where they're slow dancing with him in the kitchen, which used to kind of like bother me, or it would be like not bother me, like ew, that's not real, but just be like, yeah, no, I can't really. That kind of closeness, it was like I gotta wait to get up there to be able to enjoy that because I don't see myself being able to sort of engage in that freely. I remember there's a lady on YouTube. She's probably, I don't know. A lot of women on YouTube go in this direction, and people typically call them scammers because it's this kind of like it's a closeness. It's a people are just like, where is this in the Bible? But I think that he sort of explained this to me. But at the time when I started this journey, I was like, it was just a lot of wrestling, and it was like the same wrestling over and over, the same wrestling you would imagine. Is this really real? Is this the devil? How are you talking to me right now? Uh, like, how could this possibly be? How could I be the only person? Blah blah blah. So a lot of like the first couple of weeks, like I was saying, 2 weeks later, I tried again. Well, I tried and fell flat on my face because I realized that it was the same problem I was running into 15 years ago, where I was not ready for this reciprocal situation, even though he came at me in the beginning in a reciprocal manner. I was like, okay, yeah, let me like do this. And then I was like, oh, I don't have it. I can't. It was like Peter going out on the water. It's just like, okay, yeah, I got one step. Oh, I'm supposed to be walking. Oh, we're in the middle of the ocean. I thought he was just going to just tell me to walk for a couple of paces and then we was going to get in the boat. Like, so I had to practice. And so a lot of it was like, why are you talking to me? Why do you care? Like, it was like a lot of just inner crap. And, but I will say that, after that experience, the inner dialogue that we were having instantly like opened up, you know what I'm saying? And became, I don't want to say casual, but it became really just like transparent. But he was also like stretching me, where he was saying things that I was like, there's no way you just said that. But that was like after years of already dealing with sort of a reduced certainty of is this him really talking to me? That was like my whole life was like, did you really just say that? So he just started pushing that a lot instead of it being like every once in a while. Let me tell somebody about this every once in a while thing that I think that I still don't quite know if that was God or not. It went from that to like daily, like, oh my gosh, did you really just say that? And I kept going because aside from it being familiar, it really felt like he was entrusting me with that because he already knew that this is what I like. I want this casual relationship. I want him to be able to be comfortable with me. It's something in how he made me. I like for people to be comfortable around me. I don't like to judge them. I like to listen. I like them to say whatever they need to say. I don't want people, if you're homeless on the street, I want to listen to you. If you got something to say, just as long. People are like, what are you doing? Like, we got to go. You can tell him to leave or whatever. I'm that type of person. So, when God comes around, I want him to be able to say whatever he wants to say. Like, that's just how it is. And he knows that about me. We've already had those conversations. So he really, that initial experience, season 1, episode 1, was it was like he was telling me the entire story from the beginning, which I also hope that that will come across these videos. He was telling me the entire thing from the beginning. He's like, congratulations. The reward is me, because that's what you want. We're going to vibe for eternity. You're welcome. And it was just like at the time, when you're high, you're like, you totally get it. You're like, oh, so then we can do that. You got questions. You're like, cool. And then you get off the drugs. You're like, bitch, you was hot. And then you're like, was that really real? And it's not so much that you can't retain it, but it's just like, you have to then make an effort to do that again. And you're either going towards your demise, or you're actually literally going towards God. And you want to go, well, what's the likelihood, sis, that you of all people you're going to take drugs and you're going to head towards God? Like, I feel like I've heard that story before. I feel like I've heard about, but even that, I was like, okay, well, those people ended up becoming God and saying that they were God. That's not my delusion. My delusion, I won't say. I can literally quote the first episode because I used to listen to it every single day. It's 3 hours long, and I used to listen to it every single day. And then, if I remembered something, I would add on to it. And I really thought that was going to be the extent of it. And then it just kept going and kept going because I kept having more experiences. So one time in particular, I think this was about like June. So from April 26th is when that happened to June, I had maybe gotten high like maybe 5 times. I was still very reluctant to sort of progress in this because that was like where I had to start at. I was just like, every single time was like, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. And then once I got out there, I was like, okay, I want to be prepared. I want to like have questions. I want to, whatever. So I remember like one time I was like, okay, I'm going to record these questions or whatever, and then we're going to like go over them. And so I had these questions, and I knew I was going to be like too high to like ask the questions or like write them down. So I recorded myself asking the questions and talking about them. And then I was just going to play it back while I was high. And he's just like, you're very clever for doing that. You're very clever. Like when I was able to just be out there, like it took a while. You would think, okay, it was literally like a movie montage. It was movie montage time. Like it did not take weeks and weeks and weeks to get acquainted. It was literally like, okay, boom, jump, jump. So I remember like the second time he was like, okay, there's some things you're going to have to like get used to. He's like, first of all, I like to dance. You're going to have to like picture me dancing. I was like, I can't do it. I was like, I can't do it. I can't. He's like, well, you're high now and you have to. So here we go. I was like, oh my God. Like that. It's funny now to think about like how that pushed me so much. Like, even though when he said that, I had heard that because I'm obsessed with testimonies. I've watched every testimony that exists. So I've heard multiple people say that very thing. And I was like, that's cool. When I hear other people's, I'm like, oh. When he actually like said that to me, he's like, you're gonna like watch this right now. We're gonna dance. And I'm like, no. But it wasn't like, no, God, no. It's like, I took the drugs. I know I got to deal with what I'm understanding, like whatever. It was just like, it was sort of like being like this. And I was just like, ugh. He's like, you'll be fine. So there was a lot of like involuntary pictures of like, oh God, what's wrong with me? And, now cut to, I think it was season 4, which was like last month. I think we had a dance party. I was learning dances. He was like, do you want me to teach you how to Dougie? I was like, bro, what? I was like, I feel like I have to learn because you just said that. I was like, I got to do it because you just said that. I got to do it for the gram. Like, what? Spoiler, I do not know how to Dougie yet. I don't think he's going to let it go. But I did try to learn, and it was actually pretty fun. But I was like, wow, I haven't danced in a really long time. He's like, yeah, no, you haven't. It's like, I don't know. I think when I had kids, I mean, it's not like I ever was like cutting a rug but I used to move my body. Do you know what I'm saying? And you just get up to a certain age and you stop doing that. So that's just like a little tiny tidbit of like the stuff that's going on, right? It's all lovely and cute, right? Most of it. Some of it. So, but yeah, I was a little bothered though, because even though there was a precedent for us having this sort of relationship where he talked to me the way that he talked to me, it was like, yeah, how come you don't sound like any other people that talk to you? Like, I'm like, why am I getting like Dave down the street? Everyone else is getting like my child, daughter, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm getting like Dave down the street. He's like, you love Dave down the street version of God. I'm like, I know, I do. But it's a little disconcerting when I'm the only person. And, I'm just like, so like, you just made me to be able to like talk to you like this, and like no one else in the billions is doing this. And he said, I remember one time he was like, you always have 3 possibilities. He was like, either I talk to everybody like this, or I talk to some people like this who are like qualified people to hear me talk like this, or I talk to no people like this and you're insane and on drugs. He's like, you never just consider that you could just be the only person that I have this relationship with. I was like, yeah, because that's weird. Like, it's hard. It's not so much as weird, it's hard. Like, even though you talk all day about your singular relationship that God, and if it was only you and blah, 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 then when he actually behaves in this manner, it's like, because you want it so bad. And then also because he is like a person. He's basically like the prototype of a person. Like, you start to realize like, oh, this is what we're all based on. Like, he is the person. He's the holy person, the creator of persons. You know what I'm saying? But he doesn't have like, he's not a human with hangups and sin nature. So he's very gracious and like just cares about whatever you care about. So it kind of just feels like you're insane because he just fits over top of you like a skin. So you're like, oh, I'm on drugs and I'm feeding myself delusions of grandeur. And he's like, so he's constantly having to fight through that. But I'm also fighting through that because for the sake of this thing that I'm doing, it's like I can't just dismiss it. I got to keep at it. You know what I'm saying? And so the more I kept at it, the more dimension got added to it. And um, one time I remember I likened it to the dog buttons. This is going to probably offend somebody, whatever. So have y'all seen the dog buttons where you can like give dogs these buttons to push and they will talk to you? They understand enough, which I don't know, feel like some scientists should probably get fired or retire or something. This seems like a big deal that dogs can literally have full blown conversations with you. I feel like they should have knew that and told us that. So if you have a couple of dog buttons, he can say, outside, water, play, toy, whatever. If you have an array of dog buttons, you might get some really interesting combinations. And there's this guy on TikTok that I remember watching. He had a button that said, bruh. He had a dog button that said, bruh. The first time that the dog used that button, he was on the floor. He was on the floor. And it's like, did you mean to hit that? Oh, what are the odds? He has 4 legs. He probably just tripped. Well, it was the exact appropriate context for him to say bruh, and he did. So I don't know. And then it's like at the end of the day, wouldn't you rather live in a world where the dog knew how to say bruh? I just feel like I just would choose that. I feel like I'd rather just believe that. And that's where it gets in this hinky thing of like, oh, you're just choosing to believe. But it's like, bro, this whole thing is that. This whole thing is that. Like, you think that there's like this certainty out here and that we should just stick to that. And it's like, that's not even biblical. So, at the end of the day, I kept choosing to believe that what he was telling me was true. And he kept going out of his way, or not even going out of his way, but he was very meticulous in showing me the, leaving me proofs. Like he would say things and they would come back up later in an unrelated context. Like it would be like that was the thing he was talking about. Like you didn't know what he meant when he said it at first. You thought you did, and then it came up again when you were like floundering. You're like, oh, and then he brought it up to you again, and it was like he knew it was showing like, okay, this is God, and so you keep going until you keep going. And he's done that to me so many times now that I pretty much I got it. And this is what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? And you can't. No one can really tell you that. They can tell you it, but you have to do it because you have to have your own foundation. And I think too many people are relying on other people's foundation, and you end up with what we got, which is just a bunch of people with hearsay about God instead of actually knowing him. It's just not enough people out there that actually know him because people are shortcutting it and they don't realize that that's, it's like a tendency that people have, like even in just regular church matters, just the urge to, when you feel like you need to go to God, you go to a church, you go to a prayer meeting, like you get around other people who you feel like are knowledgeable. It's like, to God, he said, to God, come to me. And then you go to a church and you ask a person, and it's like, bro, stop doing that. And then we wonder how people get like lured off by like all of these false prophets that are like, hey, I'm willing to do every last bit of the work for you. Just listen to me. And everybody's like, woo! It's like, bro, I can't, why are you getting mad at the false prophet for that? He found a great scam and it's working. It's like Temu. It's like Temu, stop buying Temu. Oh my gosh, the people in the sweatshops are working all day. It's like, stop buying that crap. You can't. You can't, because you found a dress for $6. You know what I'm saying? It's just like there's two things happening at once. It's part of the reason why God doesn't stop it. It's like he's not going to come down. He already did all the measures to make sure that this doesn't happen, and he don't want people who are half whatever. If you're not going to actually read the thing and do the stuff in it, then by all means get taken. If you don't think it's that dangerous, like he told you how dangerous it was, and you're still doing it like that. And everybody's going, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, sure. Yeah, you're right. Amen, sister. And they're going home, doing the same thing, not opening the word, listening to someone else, telling what it says. So it gets to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm kind of not surprised that this happened to me because, it's like, I can see it now. It's like the idea of, oh, you're the person with the top secret information and gotcha. It's like, yeah, because I actually just did what it said, and I didn't listen to anyone else who said, oh, I don't think you should do that. I didn't even share it with anybody else because I knew that's what they would. I know exactly what everyone's going to say. I know what you're going to say. I don't need to consult you. So, I did this by myself. So, but yeah, for sure, the first season, if there was a theme for that season, it was, is this the devil? This is probably the devil, and you're on drugs. So that was my sort of life raft through that. I mean, trust me, I didn't get like this overnight, okay? There was very much like, and he was very gracious to allow me to test him repeatedly every single time, nonstop, because it was just like, are you the devil? This is the devil in it. Because why would the devil tell me? Because, okay, but what if the devil is telling me that, I need to take the drugs because he wants me? It's like, and then we were like talking about scripture, and it's like, yeah, well, the devil's not going to talk to you about scripture. And you're like, yeah, but like he might if it gets you off in a nonsense, like, bro, I don't even want to go back to that period. It was so intensely like thank goodness for it. But yeah, I remember it was a lot. So there was a lot of self-reflection, a lot of like, um, and just realizing at every turn that I was completely prepared for it all was just really like interesting. And I remember like another thing that came up a lot was, how is this okay? How is this okay? You're going to tell me that this is okay? And he didn't really absolve me. He just sort of, I remember one time I said, it was like, as soon as I got high, we're talking like 6 times tops. This is still season 1. And I think it was like maybe the third time, either third or fourth time. And I was like, as soon as I felt like, because I would sort of tentatively, it was still scary. I was still sort of scarred from the times that I got too high and stuff. I was still really afraid of that. And so I would be like, oh, Lord, Lord Jesus, like, whatever. I'd say a prayer. I'd be like, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the one I want to talk to. Like, doing all of these sort of like ceremonial things. But like, as soon as I felt like he was there and I could talk to him, I was like, tell me to stop. And he was like, I'm not. Why? So you can disobey me and keep doing it? Like, it's like, why would I do that? You're just going to disobey me. Then you'll have something on your record. Like, why would I do that? And it's like times like that where he answers, like, he didn't reassure me like everything, all of it was great. He just said this little thing in the moment to keep me going to the next moment. It's very trademark God. Like, God is, I don't want to be like, God would never tell you this or never tell you that, because I'm so tired of that. And it just literally like, I like would feel like such a hypocrite telling you that. But he definitely tends to not be like, this is okay, and here's how I'm going to show you how it's okay. He really wants you to put it together. He wants you to do it because you want to do it and not because he said something. and is teaching. He's like, so what are you, why are you saying that, he's asking you so that you understand yourself. And so, he kept doing that. He kept being himself, the person that I always sort of knew, even through all of this, even though it seemed like it was too large for that to possibly be happening. And a lot of times he would, if he could, we would be talking and something biblical, he could say something biblical. He was like, ha ha, ha ha, ha, I got because it's not that he doesn't say biblical things, but he's not just saying Bible all the time, bro. He's not constantly just saying scripture. Like sometimes he says other things that are not in scripture. And, you heard my testimony. He came at me with some bad language, which, I could always chalk up to drugs, but he knew that. And it was great because it was freeing and it was surprising. And it really, to me, that was him. That is him. Like, it was a simultaneous thing where the drugs were taking me just beyond my mind. He was also taking me beyond my mind. It was like, that petty shit, like, what are you talking about? That has nothing to do with me. Like, if I need to use this word to get across to you, because sometimes it's a little more, I need you to lean into this word right here. It's not just crap. Sometimes you can stop at crap. Sometimes I'm feeling stronger, just like a person or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, and he's like, why am I going to talk like, eventually when the stuff really started to come off, he's just like, why would I talk like people talked 3,000 years ago? That literally makes no sense. Why would I do that? Like, it's okay if that's where your faith is or whatever, but to make it like, oh, it's inconceivable that he would ever, that's not God. He wouldn't talk to you like a person of today. He's like, none of y'all would even be here today if I hadn't like gone before you. I'm still stuck in the 3000s BCs. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it started to sort of be a little more ludicrous, and he, the more, the more looser and the more forthcoming he got, or whatever. And let's see how much I got. Like, okay, let's see what I can say that I haven't said. Okay, so I don't want to be doing this forever. I'll tell you that. But season 1's kind of like not that much going on, so there's not that much to cover except for this is where I'm starting. I'm starting my questioning. Trust me, I'm questioning the crap out of him. He is showing me like, okay, that's a gift. Yes, you do have discernment, because I was sort of vacillate between do I have discernment or not. And he'd be like, yeah, you do. Here, let me show you. And he would just like drop me in a ravine. And I would have to like swim my way through that thing. And he's like, see, look, very good. And I'd be like, oh my gosh. And he's just like telling me things, and he's like letting me scan him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just, it was training, and it was also, and that's another thing, another hallmark to God too. It's like, it's relationship plus training plus therapy plus, teaching plus Bible, reiteration. It's like he can do everything at one time. And it's just so thorough and perfect because it's tailored to you and your life. And so there's a shorthand, you know what I'm saying? And, in the very beginning, he was talking about like, the desires of your heart, which we talk about in church all the time. And I remember being like, well, I don't really have any desires of my heart, like when I would hear that, it's like, God wants to give you the desires of your heart. And I guess I was just sort of thinking about other people's answers. because I'd be like, well, I don't really have anything like that. I just want to go to heaven and be in heaven. Like, I don't know, like, I got everything, praise the Lord. It's like I got my family, I got health. Like, that's the desire of my heart, is to like be healthy and not have to, you know, deal with knuckleheads. Like, I don't know, like, what are we talking about? So he was like, yeah, you do have desires of your heart. And um, at some point, I began to replace that because it's so churchy and familiar. And it was like, you know, he was like, your wildest dreams. And I was like, well, I sure don't have any wildest dreams. I don't have any wild dreams, let alone the wildest ones. And he's like, yeah, you do. It's this. And I was like, well, okay. But and he's like, I put it there. You don't have to, like, it's fine. Like, the only reason I know it's there is because I put it there. It's like, okay, cool. So, there's still kind of like, it's like a process where even out here where I'm at right now, at any point I could be like, oh, is this all the devil? Because these things, it's like, I can't stop being myself, and these things are always with you. Um, it's great when it finally like relaxes and you can chill, but for a while you're just like completely uptight, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this devil had me doing this. I'm out here doing whatever. And at one point, like in the very beginning, he's like, oh yeah, the devil, he got you tricked into hanging out with God, and then you're gonna like you're gonna die and go to hell for using drugs, but he's gonna make it seem like heaven. And so, it's gonna make it seem like you're here with me, but you're not, and it's gonna go on for eons. And I'm like, okay, all right, you don't have to like like he really like took my thing all the way out. Was like, yeah, he's really clever. He's just gonna make a whole heaven, and you're like, just me being uneasy in heaven for like 1,000 years, being like, what if this is really like? He's like, just making fun of me, and he was just starting to show me like how he's in charge of everything, and I got that. I would get that and then lose it. I'd be like, yeah, but okay, what about this? Because of all of the years of training, you know what I'm saying? So it was hard for it to stick in my brain. And the other thing I was going to tell you about was when I started doing when I was like actually writing our conversations out back 15 years ago in 2008, 2009. I remember because I worked in the library for about 3 years, and I remember I was working in one of the branches, and you come across a lot of books doing that because you're constantly having to put books back or whatever. And I did a lot of reading when I was working there, and I remember I came across a book which I didn't know at the time was kind of a famous book, and it was called Conversations with God. Instantly, I'm picking it up, right? I'm like, I'm having conversations with God too. You know what I'm saying? And I pick it up and I'm starting to read it, and I'm seeing sort of the same style of conversation of this guy just chatting it up with God, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, someone else did this. This is amazing. And then, I don't know, it get fairly quickly, they get to talking about aliens. And I'm like, okay. Like, I knew it wasn't a Christian book, but, I didn't know anything I wasn't really that into like New Age or any of this stuff, or what it would be considered. I know that the people that know about that author know like what he considers himself. But when I first came across that book, I was shook, only because I was literally, I think I had like just started doing that, where me and God were talking. And I was confused because, I was, 26, 27. And I was like, can you get the wrong voice? Like, can you talk to God and end up talking to some whatever? Like, I didn't understand. And I remember being really, really shook by that. And I was like, I was in my room and I was talking to God about it. And I was like upset. I don't know if I was crying out loud or if I was just in my brain. But I remember like it was like the Holy Spirit was like pushing through like what I was saying. And I just kept hearing Zoroastrianism, Zoroastrianism, Zoroastrianism. And it was like, it was just like that. It was like, it wasn't even like the word properly. It was like Zoroastrianism. It was like someone trying to read it and pronounce it. And like eventually it happened so many times I had to stop thinking or talking and listen. And I was like, Zoroastrianism? Do I need to look that up? So I looked it up and it was weird because it just came to me, you know what I'm saying? But I was just like, huh, that was really weird. And that like nothing ever came of that, nothing happened. I remember I was in a life group at the time and I was like crying to them about this book that exists. And I was like, this person is talking to God and it's all weird. And they were like, yeah, you can't, because you can't do that. You know, basically was their thing. It was like, yeah, no, it was weird because it's not a reliable way of doing that. And it was like, you know, I didn't really go much more into what I was doing, but I just remember getting tripped up by that, and then the Holy Spirit giving me that, and it was very, you know, it was very sparse. You know, I just didn't know. You know, I was just being guided. And so I think I did back off of doing that. I think just life got in the way or whatever, but eventually. And so I stopped doing that as much as I was doing it. And, you know, I just think about all these moments in my life like that, that sort of helped me shore up this, because without that, without, you know, him telling me, you know, when I got too high, and he was like, we're going to spend the day together. And then nothing happened. And then I was like, well, what even was that? And then, you know, I realized that I had, you know, the manifestation, the baptism of the Holy Spirit after that. And like all of these sort of missteps that I've had throughout life. Like if I hadn't had any of those, I wouldn't be able to do what he had me doing these last couple of months. And yeah, so, and I one time I was like, this whole thing is very like supercomputer coded. Like, are you a supercomputer? Because it was just like, are you feeding me this reality? Or are you like in it? Are you like into it? Or is like that's your way of being into it? Like I was really like not understanding his um, role in it. You know, I'm still thinking of him as this like, you know, omniscient, all powerful, you know, the way that we each sort of characterize him, and what we, you know, the way that we allow him to exist is very like stilted and stunted. And we're comfortable saying that he has these emotions or whatever we see in the Bible. It's like, okay, well, he does cry. Okay, well, he does, you know, he probably laughs. He probably, you know, whatever. We'll let some people say something beautiful and poignant for the moment. But like, as far as like having this whole range and being this whole person and kicking back with a beer or whatever, and then we had to say, well, you know, there's going to be marriage wine. I mean, it's so just, it's coming from people who've never met him. You know what I'm saying? And we're just using the Bible as context clues, and we feel like that's what we all should be doing. And I don't want to like poo-poo that, whatever. I'm not trying to be like, you know, everyone is so stupid. But it's just a shame. And it just reminds me, when I look back at this season, I'm reminded of like how far I had to go. And basically, here's what I'll say in the last sort of 5 minutes that I got. So basically, by the end of season 1, which was the final episode, was July, like not the 4th of July, it was maybe like a couple days after, it was like the 6th. And I had, you know, whatever, the extenuating circumstances, the circumstances in life. I mean, maybe they need to come up, maybe they don't. But basically, you know, there was me and my husband were fighting or whatever. And there was a bout where I was like, going to hotels and stuff just to like get away from him for a couple of days. So then he could then miss me and then I could come home and then, whatever. So that was kind of like where we were at the time. And I remember like I had gotten high and God said, he was like, yeah, you're going to end up being a junkie for me. And I was like, do what now? It was like, what? He was like, yeah, you're going to be a junkie for me because, you're not reaching the people that you need to reach because you're not low enough. He's like, the people you're trying to reach are in a completely different place than you. So, that's what you're going to do. And I was like, okay, this is the devil. This is the devil. Because why is he telling me that? This is the devil because whatever. So I'm going back and forth on that. Well, basically at the end of that, like, as I was leaving that record about what he had said to me and the things he was saying to me, I ended up teaching myself how to prophesy, which is like, you can't teach yourself how to prophesy. It's a gift. Okay, well, maybe it is a gift and he gave it to me and I figured out how to use it. All I know is by the end of that episode, Homegirl was prophesying. And it was crazy because it sounded like, not like thus saith the Lord, it sounded like the casual voice that he had already always talked to me in. So it was doubly shocking. I didn't like mean to do it. I just was trying to talk in his voice of what he was saying to me. And then after a while, I realized I was just saying a long string of things and I was answering myself. And it was like, okay, this is a new threshold. And I remember him saying like, oh, you crazy, girl. You better not show this to anybody. Like, it was like this whole stream of like, yeah, you're going to be that weirdo person. You're going to be a junkie. He's like, you're going to be prolific. That's the word that he used. He was like, people are going to call you insane, but that's okay because I didn't give you any fucks. Like, you don't have any. You literally owe people fucks. You don't have any. You know that about yourself. I'm going to use that. It was all of this stuff. And I was like, okay. So, it's like you get to the point where you get used to something. You think you're going to get used to something. You think, okay, this is going to be my life. We're going to chill. Me and God are going to this is my reward for, seeking after him. And we're going to vibe. And he's like, boom, he hits you with the information. And you're like, you sure this ain't the devil, sis? Like, oh my gosh. So that was like the first time that it happened. And I remember like, it was actually a really, really, really cool thing that I've never heard of. Because what ended up happening was I did that. I recorded it. I listened to it back. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I was like, what the hell is happening to my life? Like, whatever. It was like the first one I left thinking I can never tell anyone about this. And, I never really felt like I could tell anyone about any of it. But then when I got to that last episode, I was like, oh, yeah, I really can't tell anyone about this. But a funny thing happened because as I would go back and I would listen to that, it got I got used to it because it was me and God as I know him. And then every once in a while I'd go back and I'd be like, but then I get used to it some more. And then I realized that the things he was telling me, he was reiterating and he was confirming later, weeks later. So then I realized, oh, like, I feel like every person should do this who feels like they might have a prophetic gift. Because if you, first of all, you record yourself doing it and you give yourself the prophecy. You can't fool yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you're afraid, don't step out in faith and try to prophesy over somebody you never met before. Because we're still thinking about prophecy in the sense of like, oh, the lottery numbers or whatever. God's going to give you the secret information. And then they're going to be like, how did you know that? Like a psychic, right? Okay, give yourself the information. You think you're a prophet? Give yourself the information that God is telling you. You're not going to be impressed when you recall your old stuff from your life, okay? So that rules out that. Okay. If it's not completely outlandish and not something that you could ever hear yourself say about yourself, you're probably not prophesying. Words of encouragement are great, but him just saying, and this is somebody, like, this has come from someone who has given prophetic words of the past to myself, written down things that I felt like I was saying. And he did eventually tell me to go back through all those, and that was a trip as well. But I recorded that. It was so, it wasn't that hard because I was high when I recorded it. But after I was not high anymore and I was listening to it, I was like, oh my gosh, everything in me was like, right? A week goes by, a couple days go by, a week goes by. I'm listening to it again. It's bothering me less. It's bothering me less. Another week goes by, another week goes by. He is confirming, like, I hear the confirmations in it. I now cannot deny that I prophesied unto myself. I can't deny it. You can't. It's very, very hard to credibly cringe yourself out. Do you know what I mean? To credibly say something beyond you. And I'm not talking about you're going to be the richest. I'm talking about just things that you would never dare utter about yourself. And then you see those things being co-signed in reality. And you go, okay, that was all I needed for that to be solidified for me. I was like, okay, God's prophesying, or I'm prophesying, whatever. I don't know if that makes me a prophet, but I know that he's got me prophesying out here. And it don't sound like them other people that be prophesying. I'll tell you that right now. It don't sound like that. It don't sound like that. It sounds like a person talking. It sounds like a person talking to another person. So that instantly got my wheels turning about, gee, what would it look like if people saw someone who was prophesying and it was just God literally just talking like another person? That would be kind of cool. And so that was effectively the end of season 1 that was the finale. Do you know what I mean? And he has consistently, it sounds silly. And that's why I'm saying I hope you can see this by the end of, like, if I do 10 of these or whatever, because it seems to be in blocks of 10 episodes per season. Listen, it's a weird thing to make up. And the only explanation I have is that, he knows I'm a writer. He knows I can follow the story. So he's doing it through that. He's starting the first episode with the themes of the entire season. Then, there's episodes in the middle that get you hooked. And then by the end, it's like, bang, and you can't wait for season 2. I mean, it's literally, that's what it has been like. So that was my season 1 recap. Okay. I feel like I said everything that I wanted to say. There's one thing that I did point out that I feel like I probably should because it's just going to get weirder and weirder. So, I'm sort of trying to discreetly, diplomatically ease you into the full nature of the relationship, which is uh, romantic um, and intimacy. And part of me was like, even though it was like fish and water for me, fish and water for your girl, it was Nemo, you understand? I was like, this is probably weird. This probably is not whatever. So then I started to be like, but you know what though? Like, because I hesitate to compare it to like actual sex. I was like, I don't think that's what's going on. I just think we got hangups about sexuality and we're calling everything sex when it's just like, it's like this is the person that's closest to you. Like they know everything about you. And it's not weird at all. This is not the same thing as what y'all are doing. This is like, it's not physical. It's just, it's spirit to spirit. Like, and I'm fine with it, but it's like, I still feel like, yes. Well, actually, just wait until I'm done because I feel like you're going to launch into a thing. And I'm almost done. I love you. Okay. So, yeah. So I would just kind of be like, well, I feel like I need to have an explanation ready now. Like, that's my thing. It's like, okay, well, somebody gonna ask, what you gonna say? And you can't sound like a moron. Like, try to do as well as you can. You know what I'm saying? So that quest started immediately, and it's still sort of ongoing, although it's kind of resolved. But definitely season one, I was like, okay. It wasn't so much a show me in scripture because you'll hear Christians all day long tell you about, how we get to heaven and all of our uh, intimacies will be with the Lord, and we go, oh, and then people tell you they're going to heaven, and they're like, oh yes, just think of the greatest pleasure down here and times it by 1,000,000,000, and it's like, oh, and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that, whatever. But I'm just like, okay, but this is like, should it be as is it like just a matter of like whatever you can imagine, whatever you can conceive of? That's a clue of what your relationship is anyway. It's like whatever you can conceive is what it is. But then it's like, well, but that like, what if people are conceiving that like whatever? So I'm going back and forth. So I'm like trying to find some, what do you call it? Support. You know what I'm saying? Some support somewhere in the universe. Somewhere that's not just, woo-woo testimonies that people don't even believe anyways. So I look up the etymology of the word sex. And I'm like, not the definition. I know what the definition will tell me. I want to know the etymology. Where does this word come from? What are we talking about? What's the origin? I'm trying to find the basis in language because that's my thing. That's my wheelhouse. So I'm looking at the etymology, and everything is about male and female, gender, sex, blah, 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 you're male. And so I'm like, wow, the way we're using sex, it's like it's not even saying anything about the act. It's just like, it's like the adjective. It's like sexual having to do with two genders or just genders. It's like the word sex is just about gender. It's literally just about male and female. So I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. And then God's like, look up intercourse. Right? I know right there, he's cooked it already. I already know. Once he said that, I was like, I was ready to have my brain cooked. So I said, all right. So I look up intercourse. Would you like to know the etymology of the word intercourse? Should I just surprise you? Should I make you look it up? It's not really that. I mean, I should just tell you so you can understand. So look up the word intercourse. Etymology. Communication. To and fro, bitch. Communication to and fro. Communication to and fro. So, yes. Now, I will not speculate on anyone else's, ability to engage with God on this level. But it ain't nothing but communication to and fro. Be mature about it. And I think that is the key word, which does come up later. We'll talk about it. But yeah, he told me maturity has a lot to do with it. It's maturity and one other thing. What was it? Oh, I think it was just closeness. It's just like y'all's relationships that y'all be having. Maturity and closeness. If you don't have that, I wouldn't try anything weird. I think you should start at square one, like I did. Start at square one, like I did at 17 years old. And don't get bored. Don't get sidetracked by this one and that one, and this thing and that thing. And maybe in a while, in a couple of years, you'll have the maturity. And hopefully, after a record is left by someone who has lived it and been there and had to sort of go through a decade or so of just, yeah, right. There's no precedent for this. Where's the precedent for that? After someone shows you the steps, you might not have to wait as long as I had to wait. And as far as this being open to anybody, I'm still trying to get an answer on that, a really good one that I can give people. But by and large, I think he wants people to just, see for themselves where they're at. You probably already know. When I told my mom, some of the stuff, she was like, sis, that's weird. This is someone who I grew up hearing her say that Jesus was her man. She's like, Jesus is my man. And she would say that all the time. So when I was like, yeah, he's my man too, she was like, yeah, no, that's weird. I was like, oh, so we're not even here. That's not even your thing. She's like, no, she just want to like slow dance and get like some, have him sing songs to her and stuff. Like, it's a completely different thing. She don't want that. So it's like, she's like, I'm fully fine with not having whatever you're describing right now. I was like, oh, because a bitch went straight into the whole thing. Like, it was understood. Like, so, like, I already know, like, this is going to be, like, super weird. Like, but the idea that I'm going to get, like, 10 episodes in and then, like, spring it after you, like, let's just get this out the way. Like, let's just, we don't have to expound if you don't want to expound, but just let it be known, if something comes out that you think is like, wait, what? What did you just say? It's like, yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said. That's what it's like. That's what it was. Like, so, I'm never going to just be completely like out of pocket and distasteful, but, I want to be upfront because I'm not good at like trying to hide stuff and all that. I'm not good at that. I'm just going to like blab it and then everybody's going to be like, oh, it's like, yeah, that's my whole life. So God made me to do that. That's why if he gave this to me, it's because he wants that to be done. Like, that's how he wants it. He wants it like, he wants people confused and he wants things messy. So, I'll help you out where I can. But, yeah, just know that, that's kind of where we're going, like, and that's not like the only place. That's not the biggest deal. The biggest deal is what he told me and what he's revealed to me. That is just like, again, your relationships in real life. People aren't in your private stuff, and you don't engage with people on that level. So I don't expect to engage with y'all on that level. Trust me, I'm not out here to just make y'all uncomfortable or whatever. But God is my man. He is my, I'm his. That's just what it is. And like, we like to sing songs about it. And then, but this is why we go home and we're not connected to it, because we're just like not really, either we don't think it's possible or whatever. And, one of the other things that happened during the season, this first season, was wait, I just lost it. What was I going to say? Oh no, I'm not even high. Hold on. Okay, I got it. Speaking of which, I should probably forewarn you that um, I think God does want me to. Maybe it'll be like a live stream or something, but I do think He wants me to take something and pop on here, because and even if He doesn't, like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, you can be like, oh, she's possessed, whatever, this is happening. Like, He's got me doing it, it's happening. So watch or don't. But so yeah, one of the first things that happened, like after the first episode, the season 1, episode 1, was that, like, I started this musical playlist that was sort of like encompassing, like, it was every song that I ever was drawn to and made me feel a way suddenly became completely relevant to my situation. Songs that, and I've always been, I'm very, I wanted to work in the music industry back in the day. So I've always had this like relationship with music. And I went throughout all of your secular music phase. I did all that. And I'm not saying that was bad. I'm actually glad that I did that, because, it was kind of like a big part of my identity at one point. But, I went through that, did that. And it hurt, but I did it. And now it's all digital. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I used to have the big binder. I threw that whole thing out. And that was about, I don't know, like 13 years ago or something like that. But, He sort of redeemed that, and He's continuing to do that. And yeah, when I had that experience with Him, I was so eager to make this playlist sort of commemorating that. And I made this musical playlist that it was like, I can tell you right now, maybe like 12% of it is Christian songs. The rest of it is love songs, or just, what we would call secular songs. But ain't nothing secular about them songs for me, sis. Them songs is sacred as all get out. To the point where I was like, the love songs really are matching the energy the best, to be honest, because when you really actually meet Him and you understand, you feel His energy and all that stuff, it's like the same energy that makes people write a memorable line, a memorable lyric, that makes a whole mess of memorable lyrics, that makes a whole song that becomes a hit. It's like, for you to write something down that is that significant, it's probably about some aspect of love that He has in droves. You know what I'm saying? You're only going to make a song about something that really, really matters in the way of love, and it's probably something He's already expressed to you or whatever. These songs about how He would do anything for you. It's like, okay, well, that tracks. You know what I'm saying? He would literally bleed. There's so many songs about bleeding. And it's like, how y'all got a lot of nerve writing that about your boyfriend. I'll take that. That's mine now. I'll be taking that song. I just added this today. Like, I was in the Albertsons and I thought about that song. Like, every once in a while, I'm like, oh, add that to the list. Or he'll be like, add this to the list. That's going to come up later too. He tells me to add things to the list. But I just thought about that song, Dangerously in Love. I was like, bro, I'm taking that song. That doesn't belong. I don't even think whoever wrote that couldn't have possibly been talking about a dude. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, how could that even apply to a dude? That 100% is God's song. I will be taking that. That's mine now. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about song redemption and how, God is not, really that threatened by your music collection, unless it has to do with your heart, not the music itself. We'll get into that. But yeah, that was like literally the first thing I did. And it was so amazingly great, especially as a music lover. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to like have an actual connection to these songs, and I'll be able to sing them, and they're going to actually mean something. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing the stuff. I'm actually doing the thing. I can't believe it. So hold on. Sorry about that. My child came in with literally just some tidy whities. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all I have to say. And I was gonna say, like, one of the songs, and it's really crazy because there's a couple of dreams that I had before any of this happened to me that I went back and I looked at. And one of the dreams I had, I don't remember when it was, but I know it was before April. And I had this dream. There's this song, there's a Mariah Carey song that, I'm a lamb, you might as well know. So, huge Mariah Carey fan. There's a song on her second album called Till the End of Time. And it's like one of my favorite songs of hers. It's just an album cut. And I had a dream that I was singing this song at the top of my lungs. I was like on a beach or something. I was just it was just it was just me. And I was singing this song, like, because, the first part, if I was singing my lungs out, I was at the end, you know what I'm saying? Because, where I like to do that, at the end. So it was like the bridge is like, tell me what you need. Let me give you all of me. Because without you, nothing's real. You're the reason that I feel. Like, it was just this, like, and I was just singing it, like, because in dreams, I don't know if you have that trouble in dreams where you can't really, like, sometimes you can't really talk. You certainly can't, like, sing. And I was singing, like, to my toes in that song. So, or in that dream. And I remember waking up and being like, oh, wow. And I always did this thing that I was like, that was so poignant because I knew it was God. And it was one of those things where I didn't even realize that song could even be applied to him. Like, this was before everything. I didn't even realize that song could be applied to him until I knew that it was, God gave me that dream. And what was my first instinct? I love that so much that I can never listen to that song again. It was literally like, I don't even want to listen to that song anymore because I was so closed off. And so, like, if I heard anything that, like, made me feel, it was like, I just was like, I can't even, I just knew that it existed. It's like, okay, like, a lot of people, if you know anything about Yeba, that song on Drake's album that's like a minute long. I heard that song one time. I was like, I can never listen to this song again. And of course, now all that's broken. I listen to it all the time. I put on repeat, whatever. But at the time, it was like, it's making me feel too much. I can't. Like, I just didn't want to even open the box because I was just like, I didn't realize that I was missing something. Do you know what I mean? I knew that I loved God, and I just figured whatever relationship we're supposed to have, we'll have it up there, on the other side of heaven when revelation can just flow, and, nobody can be like, what? That's wrong. You can't do that. You can do that. You just have to be up there and accept whatever it is. And I can be able to just accept whatever it is. And, God had other plans. He had other plans, and, thank goodness that he did. I'm glad that he did. It's a little weird, but I'm over it now, and now I understand what he's doing. So, yeah. So, whatever. 125, 1 hour is close enough. And that's all for today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.